About 5 miles east of Brinkhill is a town called Alford. Locals there have also seen triangular objects hovering silently in the sky. Can you tell me what you have seen in your time as a taxi driver late at night in this region?
There's only the one incident really. I was driving home from Skegness towards Louth one night, about 3 in the morning, and there was a thing hovering in the sky with lights, and the lights were too big to be stars, so I sort of was keeping an eye on it. And then it just shot away at a speed that I thought was much faster than the Harrier jump jet type things.
Right.
And since then it's been explained away to me as being a covert military
stealth aircraft.
Yeah. And I just accepted that as
You've accepted
fact.
that. So can I ask, you read that in the newspaper, or where did you get that from, that explanation?
I've got various friends who are quite into aircraft.
Right.
And when I mentioned the incident, they said, oh, that would be whatever it was.
Okay. So
they test quite a lot out of Coningsby.
Right, so a test aircraft flown from Coningsby.
It was quite low. It was probably like 3 stories.
Okay. And what sort of size?
Quite big. Probably about the size of a articulated lorry.
Right. What about colour and luminosity?
It was very dark. There was no luminosity, but it was lit at both sides. And it had legs.
Right, it had legs.
It had legs. It was outlined in the sky, and it had legs, and there were lights on just above the legs.
I see. And what sort of shape would you describe it as?
Triangular.
All right, so it was a large flying triangle, basically.
With legs.
Right. Okay. And then, but it was stationary.
It was hovering.
Hovering, and then.
Silent. There was no noise.
So there was no noise.
No, and then it just went.
This woman was told by a friend that she saw a military aircraft. But going by her description of it being completely silent and its acceleration on departure, it sounds like she was seeing one of the same objects described by Eric Goring. The next witness's sighting is very different. It took place in September 2011 in broad daylight, and the object described was much larger. Not triangular either. I spoke to the witness by telephone.
From Alford to Mablethorpe, and it was actually on Staleby Crossroads.
Alford to Mablethorpe Road, okay.
Yes. And I come up to it, and it's pretty blind because there's trees either side.
And were you heading towards Mablethorpe or back?
Yes, I was heading towards Mablethorpe.
Okay, so you're about two miles out of Alford, heading towards Mablethorpe.
So I do that trip every single day.
Yeah.
And I do the school runs twice a day when my wife's not here. And the sunroof was down and everything. It's got a sunroof. I remember that really, really vividly. And I came round the corner, and my little girl was in the back, and she screamed. And the car in front of her stopped, and there was this grey egg-shaped thing, like a king, because I can say, and it was, say the road's 20 feet across, because it's a normal size A road. I would say it was 3 times wider than the road. What came to mind was a huge, I thought it was like a Westland Wessex helicopter. That's what came into my mind, because they're like big bulbous thing. It was stopped right above the road, and it was absolutely huge. Like it was bigger than a plane, massive. And it was just moving forward about 1 mile an hour.
Right.
And all of a sudden, it just shot back the opposite direction, the same way it came, but
so which direction did it come from?
The east.
So from the
field.
So from the sea, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it shot back towards the sea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you managed to pin down a date yet?
The date, I have no idea.
But you said it was September, yeah?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was September, because that's the month that I had that black FTO.
Right.
That's the only way I can really pinpoint it.
But you think was it a school day because you'd pick your kids up or not?
It was definitely 100% a school day.
Okay.
It was only 20 feet above the road, and it was bigger than the road and the tree. It was massive. I can't put it into scale. So if it's next to a car, if it was like next to a car, it would be the size of 10 double-decker buses.
Right.
That big.
So it was 3 times the width of the road, you said?
Yeah, I'd say, yeah. It was like the only thing you could see when you looked up. You couldn't see the sky around it.
Okay.
And that was freaky because the way it shot back, it was instant, and my girl was crying her eyes out. And my boy was, oh my God, what was that?
And so no noise at all?
Pardon?
No noise at all?
absolutely no noise. The only thing that was weird, I could taste. It was like, I could taste, that sounds stupid, I sound like an idiot, but I could taste electric. You know, like, you know when you put an old PP3 battery on your tongue?
Yeah.
Taste that.
And you said you could smell like a transformer type smell. A few months after this sighting, reports reached local media about objects being witnessed over Mablethorpe. I don't think any open-minded person would doubt there is something peculiar going on in the skies over this sparsely populated coastal area. Let's put some markers on this map of the region where activity is being reported. We have sightings over Mablethorpe. We have triangles over the A16 and over Brinkhill. UFOs witnessed over Louth. The wind turbine incident and the egg-shaped object witnessed near Alford. Now that we have plotted the activity on a map, let me show you the exact location of the field where 1,500 sheep disappeared without trace on September the 11th, 2011. Could the near proximity of this field to the Lincolnshire Triangle be of some significance? Let's have a listen to the detective in charge of the case speaking on local radio.
Obviously, once you walk into a field, you can see that there are quite a few sheep missing, but until you actually do your tally, you're not sure exactly how many have gone, and that's gone up considerably now to 597 ewes and 901 lambs.
And what's the herdsman told you about how somebody could do this? How they could come along? Because you've got to know what you're doing to take 1,500 sheep.
Certainly. I mean, this is an organised group that have come along, ready kitted with the necessary transport. We suspect to be extremely large loaders, cattle wagons, probably the sort that are 3 tiers high. He says to load on 1,500 sheep, if you knew what you were doing and you were going to pen them properly within the lorries, it would take you about an hour per lorry. However, if you were going to do it without any care in the world, as we suspect that these people have done, you could load them without their pens, squash them all in together, and you could do probably a quarter of an hour per lorry. So probably about half an hour in total it's taken to do this.
And of course the question is where they've gone, and I know one line of inquiry is looking at whether they could have gone through an abattoir, and I suppose it would have had to been an unlicensed abattoir if they have done, because everything is very strictly regulated these days, isn't it?
Certainly. It would be very difficult to take any cattle through any marketplace because they're, as you say, extremely regulated, and any marketplace would know, they know their farmers, they come on a regular basis, and they know that they bring so many sheep, and they know how many sheep they've got, or how many cattle they've got. But to take this amount of sheep, you would be noticed straight away at market. So the only other option really is that these sheep have been taken probably for slaughter somewhere. And again, as you say, it's very well regulated. Our country is probably one of the better ones at regulating the slaughter of meat. And these animals have been herded off somewhere and will be certainly not treated as well as they would be if they were done through the proper channels. I would urge any member of the public that gets offered any meat from the back of a van or anywhere else that doesn't seem to be proper and not a proper butcher's, not to purchase those items, because that's probably where they will go onto the market somewhere.
Large transporter wagons like this one will typically hold around 500 sheep. Therefore, at least 3, possibly 4 wagons would have been required to steal them. One thing the detective did not mention is there was no evidence to suggest that transporters had been parked anywhere near the field, nor was there any evidence that sheep had been loaded, such as droppings or wool on the ground. We will come back to this point. Then, 5 weeks after the disappearance, it seemed the case had been solved when 3 people were arrested for the theft. The BBC website reported, Lincolnshire sheep rustling, 3 arrested. 2 men and a woman have been arrested after the theft of almost 1,500 sheep in Lincolnshire. After some time, what made me curious is there was no follow-up story to these arrests. No story to say if they had been found guilty or even charged. So I decided to seek out first-hand witnesses to try and find out exactly what had happened. I drove through Brinkhill on the way to the field and stopped to ask a man walking his dog if he knew anything. He said the farmer says the shepherd is responsible. I asked, what does the shepherd say? He said, the shepherd says he is not responsible. I arrived at the nearest village to the field, a small place called Donington. Walking into the local shop was like a scene from the League of Gentlemen. The woman refused point blank to talk about anything. I managed to find out from one local that the 3 arrested were in fact the shepherd, aged 38, the shepherd's wife, and the shepherd's father, aged 62, who is also a shepherd. However, this local would not give me their names. I got the impression this incident was quite a sensitive issue here, and much finger-pointing had been going on. The local told me where to find the field, so I went to investigate. The field in question is oblong, about 420 metres long and 220 metres wide, with steep slopes on 2 sides. It is bordered by an electric fence on one side, a narrow road on another side, and 2 more fields on the other 2 sides. There is only one feasible place where sheep could have been taken from the field into trucks, which is via the single gate leading to the narrow road. This is the field where the sheep disappeared from, and I'm standing right in the far corner of the field, and I'm just going to pan around and show you this. This is a fence here, which it's not a very big fence, but I think it might be an electric fence. I'm not sure. That's like the reels of wire there, which I'll just pan around and show you. It stretches across the field there, because we know that the sheep weren't on this side of the fence because there's no gate. There's no gates in this field, it's open, so it's just used for crops. So the sheep were definitely in the bottom half of this field, which is split in 2 by this fence, which it could be an electric fence. Still no sheep being put back in it, and there's no crop in here, it's just grass. I'm going to go to the other side of the field and take some photographs. So, assuming that the sheep were this side of the fence, and that's the only logical explanation, there's no exit point. So there's no exit point of the fence, there's no exit point across the other side, there's no road there that a vehicle could get down, and there's only one exit point that a vehicle could come to, and that's this point here. And according to the detective, there was no evidence that any vehicle had actually been anywhere near that gate. Okay, I've been right round the field now and I'm walking back. I could spend a few hours here and look for landing impressions, see if there's any evidence. I can't see anything. It's a huge field, so to do that would take quite some time. Right, so I'm just on my way out of the field, and I've just seen some evidence, obviously, that sheep have been in this field. And as I mentioned earlier, you can see as the sheep walk past these bushes and hedges, there's always remnants of wool on them. So, as I was saying before, if 1,500 sheep passed through that narrow entrance, there would be evidence of wool, you would imagine, in the hedgerow. Another question for the detective would be, was the gate still padlocked as it is now after the sheep had been taken? There was only one property anywhere near the field, which was about 80 yards from the bottom corner. I managed to speak to the couple who live there. This is Patrick and Gabriella, and just standing in front of their house here. And if I just come out the house, the field starts just on that corner, because there's a fence going across from there. Right. So as you've gone around that corner, to the left is where, at that point. Yes. Okay. Right. Now, on that particular night when these sheep disappeared, did you hear anything?
No, we didn't hear a thing, did we? No.
And I can hear the dog barking there now.
Yes. So. I'm a fairly heavy sleeper. My wife can be light sleeping, but neither of us heard anything.
Okay.
My dog would have heard something, I would have thought, if they'd been in the proximity of the house.
Now there are rumours that the shepherd and his wife were implicated, and that they were arrested, perhaps for taking money from the people who turned up with these wagons.
Yes, that's what we'd heard.
That's what you'd heard.
He took a backhander because he was involved.
Now this is rumour, isn't it? You were telling me that you've not heard this, because I haven't seen that in the newspapers.
No.
You said you think you might be inside now.
Well, that's what I'd heard, but you know what
Right.
people are like, oh,
Yeah.
he's locked up now and this sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
All I can assume was it was done in the early hours of the morning, in the dark, and how they did it without being seen or heard.
Because that's the other question. They would have had to have sheepdogs, 1,500 sheep, rounding them up to just give the sheepdogs night vision goggles, perhaps.
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether they use any dogs or what.
Well, I would have thought they'd have to get.
Well, I would have thought so.
Unless it was just a gang of men running around the fields. But I mean, the sheep were definitely in there about sort of 5 or 6 o'clock the night before, because I remember driving home and seeing
Oh, right.
them
So
there.
you're a witness to them being there at 6 o'clock.
They were there about tea time the night before.
Great.
Yes, and then not the next morning.
So, I mean, you're talking seeing a lot of sheep the night before.
Yes,
Because it's a
yeah.
huge amount of sheep. And then
It's a it's a very big field.
So you're a first-hand witness to that following day, there was no sheep in the field.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you were actually visited by Special Branch?
Yeah, Special Branch came to ask us if we'd heard anything, because, you know, they reckoned there would have been quite a bit of noise. They reckoned they'd need at least 2 wagons, and the noise of the sheep. I mean, you know, they're not quiet, are they?
No, they make a lot of noise.
And we had to say that we hadn't heard a thing.
An interesting structure overlooks the field about a mile to the south. This isn't a radio transmitter, it is effectively a big climbing frame used by RAF Digby to climb up and down. It has very large viewing platforms placed partway up the tower. I asked one of the locals what it was for, and she told me that the RAF climb up and down it and occasionally camp out overnight on the platforms. This was all getting very Bob Lazar. Why are there huge viewing platforms on the top of a hill which overlooks the entire Lincolnshire Triangle? In addition to the viewing platform, nearby are some rather rusty-looking, very large satellite dishes.